Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito facing ethics questions now after a new report from ProPublica. It alleges that Alito accepted several high-paying gifts from a billionaire friend, including an undisclosed luxury fishing trip to Alaska on a private jet in 2008. That same billionaire had roughly 10 cases before the court over the last few years, but Alito failed to disclose their friendship or recuse himself from any of those cases. ProPublica did reach out to Alito for a response, but rather than responding directly, Justice Alito wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal attacking the report, saying neither claim is valid. This comes after another ProPublica report on similar ethics concerns for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas came about. ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer has been following all of this for us. He covers the Supreme Court. So, Devin, what in this report stands out to you the most right now?
Well, this report, Kira, is from 15 years ago, 2008. As you said, Justice Samuel Alito went on this fishing trip to Alaska, and he stayed at a lodge there, $1,000 a night. But the real kicker is that he took a flight on the billionaire's jet. Paul Singer is the man's name. He's a hedge fund manager. And that flight up to Alaska could have cost up to $100,000 for the average person if you booked it yourself. None of that was disclosed in his financial disclosure forms, which would seem to be required by federal law passed after the Nixon Watergate scandal. And so what we've heard in the past 24 hours from Justice Alito in the pages of the Wall Street Journal is that he did nothing wrong. He said, look, the rules were clear at the time that personal hospitality is exempt from reporting. He thought that he had followed those rules, and that, of course, at the time that he went on this trip, none of Paul Singer's hedge funds had come before the court, and he says he didn't discuss it. But bottom line here is this doesn't look good. It comes in the wave, part of this wave of reports of the past few weeks of justices not disclosing certain things, and it just underscores, Kira, how opaque the transparency rules are on the nation's highest court.
So in his op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, Alito defended his failure to report about the 2008 trip to Alaska and said that he ultimately went aboard Singer's private jet because it would, quote, have otherwise been an unoccupied seat. Is this an acceptable response?
Well, I don't know whether or not the seat was occupied or would have been occupied as relevant to the analysis. It was sort of a curious line from the justice in the Wall Street Journal. But fact of the matter is, as he points out there, that at the time he took this trip back in 2008, the guidelines were clear that personal hospitality, things like going over to a friend's house for dinner, joining them even on holiday at a summer lodge, maybe even going on a fishing trip, don't need to be reported. Those are things that the government has said. Public officials are allowed to have personal lives. They're allowed to have friends. They're allowed to wine and dine even with well-heeled and well-connected people. And that can even include Paul Singer. So that's Samuel Alito's argument. But he does sort of, walk the line on whether or not this flight qualified for the exemption. The law talks about hospitality and lodging and facilities. And Samuel Alito, in his defense, says that he interpreted facilities to include flights, and that's why he didn't include it.
So rather than responding directly to the report, he writes this op-ed once again behind a paywall for the Wall Street Journal. What does this tell you about how seriously he's taking these reports? He's just going to the newspapers.
It's extraordinary to see a sitting justice, and by the way, we're in Supreme Court prime time. They're in the midst of handing down some very high-stakes, controversial decisions in the next few days, taking to the pages of one of America's, top newspapers to pre-butt a report about him in ProPublica. This op-ed from Justice Alito came out before the story was even published, so he came to his own defense. What does that tell you? It tells you that this is a justice that's going to fight back. This is a group of conservatives on this court that does not believe that they need new ethics rules, and he was laying out in that article why that is. But I got to tell you, Kira, in response to this, Democrats on the Hill are again talking about needing to push legislation to rein in the Supreme Court on ethics.
Devin Dwyer, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.